this is a very great opportunity for our Navy, for our pilots, to know other techniques and to grow in experience in this.
Who won the dogfights?
I cannot tell you that. I cannot tell you that.
Okay.
I cannot tell you that.
Hello, everyone. This is Admiral Jamie Foggo from the Center for Maritime Strategy at the Navy League of the United States, just outside Washington, D.C. You're listening to Maritime Nation, the Center for Maritime Strategy's podcast designed to dive deeply into the policy challenges facing America's sea services and the role of the United States as a sea power on the global stage. Thank you to Dataminr for sponsoring Season 4 of Maritime Nation. We're honored today to be joined by Rear Admiral Giancarlo Ciappina of the Italian Navy. Admiral Ciappina graduated from the Italian Naval Academy in 1996. He received his Naval Aviator Wings of Gold in Corpus Christi, Texas, as a fixed-wing pilot before qualifying as a rotary wing pilot in 1998. For the next 6 years, until 2004, he served aboard several Italian ships of the line and an ASW helicopter pilot's position at sea. Ashore, he served as flag aide to the Chief of the Italian Navy and the Minister of Defense, followed by tours as head of the cabinet of the Undersecretary of State for Defense and as assistant to the Deputy Chief of the Navy. Admiral Ciappina has commanded many times, first as commanding officer of the patrol vessel Spica, employed mainly to counter illegal fishing and migration in the Mediterranean Sea. Following this tour, Admiral Ciappina assumed command of the Frem-class frigate Virginio Fazan. I was aboard Virginio Fazan in Lower Manhattan during Fleet Week in 2023. What a beautiful ship. And for the benefit of our viewers, the term FREM stands for Fregate Européenne Multimissione. And we are building a modified version of the FREM in Marinette, Wisconsin on the Great Lakes called the Constellation-class frigate. First ship of the line is under construction now. Well, while in command of Virginio Fazan, Admiral Ciappina deployed to the Mediterranean Sea during the Mare Sicuro, or Secure Seas, operation and NATO's Active Endeavor operation. Finally, he was CEO of the Italian Navy flagship, the aircraft carrier Cavour, and we're going to talk about her today, which deployed to Norfolk during his command tour to execute the Ready for Operation campaign aimed at the certification to operate the fifth-generation F-35B VSTOL aircraft. Admiral Ciappina was the first head of the Office for Outer Space and Innovative Technologies at the Italian Navy General Staff, and later as executive assistant to the Chief of the Italian Navy. In June of 2023, he's fulfilled the duties of Commander of the Italian Fleet Air Arm and Director of the Naval Aviation Department of the Italian Navy General Staff. And on June 1st, 2024, he became the commander of the Italian Navy Carrier Strike Group Cavour, which deployed for the first time to the Indo-Pacific region. Admiral Ciappina holds a bachelor's degree in maritime and naval science, a master's in public administration and communication, as well as a master's in global strategy and security. Admiral, benvenuto a Maritime Nation. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you for such a tremendous presentation. And I wonder if I did all these things myself. But
amazing career.
But thank you. Thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you for an invitation to the Center for Maritime Strategy, because this is talking about the maritime domain, and it's very important for all of maritime countries as Italy and US, of course. So this is a great opportunity. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Grazie mille. And we thank you for being here, coming at our invitation all the way from Italy. It means a lot to me. And before I jump into questions, Admiral, I just want to say hello to some friends back in Italy, scattered all over the country in operational and staff billets. First and foremost, your CNO, Admiral Enrico Credendino. And I have his book on my coffee table in the other office we were in this morning. Chink Nav, one of my former fleet commanders from Trident Juncture, Admiral Aurelio de Corollas, and I received a note from him before you got here, so it was wonderful, and the note that he brought me with the beautiful Amerigo Vespucci coin, so thank you. Admiral Girardelli, who was Chief of Naval Operations while I was in Naples as 6th Fleet Commander, and of course, Admiral Pino Capodragone, who was your CNO, and also your CHOD, and is now the chairman of the Military Committee of NATO, which is absolutely amazing. And of course, my venerable Chief of Staff, the best Chief of Staff I think we ever had at JFC Naples, General Luciano Portolano, who I'm just delighted is occupying the position as Chief of Defense of Italy, and there is no better officer for that job. So thank you so much. Now, Admiral, you took Cavour to the Indo-Pacific, which is a pretty long way from the country of Italy, to deploy with the Carrier Strike Group and several associated support ships. Why did Italy do this, and where did you go, and how did it go for you as far as being all the way across the globe from home? I mean, you're very much like one of the original Italian explorers and navigators, Amerigo Vespucci. And ironically, when you arrived in the Pacific, I was on the dock in L.A. as an American who served in Italy, welcoming Amerigo Vespucci, your tall ship that came around the Cape Horn, which an incredible transit to dock there before she headed out into the rest of the Pacific along with Cavour. So what can you tell us about the deployment?
All right, thank you. Because the Italian Navy, of course, has been growing in experience for more than 30 years with embarked air operations with the AV-8B. Now changing and to the 5th generation aircraft, so the F-35Bs, we've been preparing a lot this deployment. It was time to demonstrate some achievements, some capabilities to test this new system. And why the Indo-Pacific? The Indo-Pacific is now growing and growing in importance and being a maritime regional power. The Italian Navy sees with a lot of interest that whatever happens in the maritime domain. So we talk about the widened Mediterranean. There is the area that you are very familiar with your previous experience in Europe. So where all the vital interest, let's say, of Italy mostly lays. Now we talk about a global Mediterranean because we see a continuity, a connection among all the oceans. So starting from the Pacific, the Indian Oceans, and the Mediterranean Sea. So see what is going on now in the Red Sea, the piracy in the Indian Ocean. So everything is connected. Everything that happens in the Pacific has immediate repercussion and reflects also in the wider Mediterranean and the Mediterranean itself, so in Europe. So we have to be there. We have to grow in experience also in the Indo-Pacific. So we had two main objectives, let's say, two pillars. One, it was the participation in the Austrian lead exercise, the Pitch Black exercise. It was the very first time that this exercise was hosting an aircraft carrier with the air wing embarked. So this was one of the main objectives. And the other one was arriving in Japan and to start with them a new level of cooperation, because it was not, of course, the first time we had other ships in that part of the Pacific Oceans, but being the Japan, a partner of the F-35B program, and being their Navy ready to upgrade their cruiser to STOVL carrier. I'm talking about the Kaga and the Izumo class.
Yeah, Kaga's amazing.
We did a lot of work together, and we trained at sea. So we showed them the way we approached the Cavour upgrade to the F-35 campaign. So these were the two main objectives, let's say military and technical objectives. And overall, we grow a lot in experience in the area that we are looking always with great interest. And in this sense, using the F-35Bs together with the Air Force for the first time, being on board the ship with our jets as well. So we could be able to make some achievements and declare the initial operational capability. This happened at the end of August when we were in Japan with Admiral Credendino, and of course there was also Minister of Defense Crosetto for this very important milestone for the Italian Navy and for the Italian defense. So overall, this is the overview of this campaign, and I was very, very proud and of course happy to be there to lead this campaign, also for my current position as commander of the Italian Navy Fleet Air Arm.
Wow. I mean, that is an incredible story. And your story of coming here many, many years ago after the Naval Academy to train with naval aviators, international naval aviators, but in the United States, get your fixed wing, rotary wing, and then have the opportunity to command at sea something, a magnificent platform like the FREM before going to command of Cavour and then taking Cavour as a strike group commander to the Pacific. I mean, that is a career path that one can only imagine might happen. I mean, it's a dream come true. You mentioned several things. First of all, I couldn't agree with you more on the global Mediterranean. One of the things that I've always pitched, since I wrote a piece for Proceedings in 2016 called The Fourth Battle of the Atlantic. But the Atlantic in terms of an integrated Atlantic, and I used to say all the creeks and tributaries off the Atlantic to include the Baltic Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Arctic Ocean. And of course, the thing that joins the Atlantic with the Pacific is that transpolar bridge across the Northwest Passage or over the pole or the Northern Sea Route that goes through the Bering Sea and into the Pacific. So we are all interconnected in the waterways of the world, and it's so important that Italy realize this and send our aircraft carrier out there. You mentioned the AV-8B, and I was part of Odyssey Dawn and Unified Protector. I can see that some of your officers were also involved there, Captain Fagnani, and we had the AV-8B on Garibaldi. Garibaldi was down close to the Gulf of Sidra, and it was right next to the command ship Mount Whitney, where I was the OPSO. And you flew those AV-8s, you flew the wings off them, and occasionally Italy would call to the headquarters in Naples and say, we need maintenance. We need regional maintenance on the AV-8, and we're unable to do that here. So we would actually put a hook on a lifting rod and lift the AV-8 on one of the amphibious ships that came into port in Italy, and we would send her home. And about, 18 months, 2 years later, after the depot maintenance was done on the AV-8 Harrier, they'd put it on another ship and they'd bring it back and drop it off in Naples. An Italian pilot would come in and fly it home. That was very inefficient. Now with the F-35, you have a regional maintenance center. It's the first regional maintenance center in Europe, to the great credit of Italy. And I think the Norwegians were your first customer. So all that maintenance for the F-35 can be done in Europe, which is phenomenal. And the other thing you mentioned, sir, is how the F-35 as a platform brings nations together. Your former air attaché told me that it's completely changed the mindset of the air arm, whether it's the Air Force or the Navy, and that is you have complete visibility of the battlefield from one aircraft miles and miles away to another, and you're all interconnected. So it really brings the team together to fight like a team. And when you can cross cultural barriers or language barriers like that between the U.S., Italy, the U.S., Japan, Italy, Japan, and perform at the top level of performance against what may someday be an adversary in the Pacific, I think that's absolutely fantastic. So kudos to you and your team. Really, really a wonderful story. Now, Admiral, our aircraft carriers are named after presidents of the United States. So I looked up the namesake for Cavour, and I was impressed to find out that she is named after an Italian patriot, one of the founding fathers of the Italian state, the first prime minister of Italy, Camillo Benso Conte di Cavour, a fitting name for the biggest Italian warship since the battleships of the 1930s. So let's kind of hone in on the capabilities of the carrier Cavour. How does Cavour compare to other European aircraft carriers in terms of capability and operational flexibility? And how does it improve the combat effectiveness of the Italian Navy? And I can tell you, I noticed differences between working with the Garibaldi and the very modern systems that you have improved on ITS Cavour. It's not a nuclear-powered platform. It's a conventional platform. But the fact that you were able to go all the way from Italy to the Western Pacific and back and without any problems whatsoever is a great credit to the Italian Navy and to you and your leadership. So what can you tell us about Cavour?
Right. Thank you, sir. Let me first say, you were talking about Unified Protector down in 2011, and that was an amazing example of what we experienced now in reciprocal logistic support between the Italian Navy and our allied. So that was a very important thing that we realized, that we put in place down there in the Pacific area with the 7th Fleet, but also with the 5th Fleet in the Indian Ocean and with other allied that were deployed in the area. So the key of the reciprocal support is fundamental if you want to be effective and efficient in the area. And so this is what we experienced as well during our deployment. So we've been receiving continuously support by our U.S. friends and allied in the area. That was really awesome. Coming back to Cavour, of course, now that has the real capability of using the F-35Bs, is the very first and only aircraft carrier in Europe, in EU, operating a 5th generation aircraft. So this puts
that's right. Yeah, that
puts
didn't occur to me.
the Italian Navy at a different level. Of course, the French Navy has a nuclear power carrier, but we trained a lot with the French Navy, and our certification before the deployment, it was made during our national exercise. You're very familiar with it, Mare Aperto.
Yes, Mare Aperto.
And we made a specific Mare Aperto edition together with the French Navy, their Polaris, their national exercise. So we put together Polaris and Mare Aperto, and we made a very high-end training. When you say train as you fight, we stayed at sea, the Italian Cavour Strike Group and the French Cavour Strike Group, and we fought against each other in a real war scenario. That was an awesome exercise, and this helped a lot before crossing the Red Sea and be really effective and ready to work to any difficult scenario, let's say, during the deployment. So that was something that we realized it was very effective, and that's what we are going to do to certify the Cavour Strike Group before each deployment, exploiting the Mare Aperto scenario that is very fruitful of experiences for the carrier. So now that we have the 5th generation capability, together with the extremely flexible platform that a VTOL carrier has, because Cavour is always ready to be at sea within 24 hours. It really requires a very short amount of time to be ready to be operational, because also the naval air base where our jets are deployed is very easy. In Grottaglie is very nearby, so we really need a very short amount of time to put the Cavour with the escort ships at sea. So this makes it very very effective, very flexible. And the Navy is the Italian Navy, of course, sees in the aircraft carrier capability and the Cavour Strike Group one of the main 3 pillars of the Navy high-end capability, together with the Amphibious Task Group, because we are developing now with the arrival of ITS Trieste, the biggest ship delivered to the Navy last December, and together with the Special Forces, of course. So those are the 3 pillars where we base the high-end capabilities for the Navy, and we focus on Cavour, and we are keeping on modernizing it, and also for some operational changes that we suggested after the deployment. So these were going to be in place very soon. one thing that we realized, exploiting the experience with the AV-8B, it was the tight integration of the air wing together with the crew of the ship. We arrived during the deployment at being almost 900, so 900 people deployed together with the air wing, the staff of the Cavour Strike Group. So the community is very tight. It's very used to work together, to develop procedures, to be trained. So this makes very flexible and suitable for very quick deployment. The Cavour Strike Group itself and the Cavour, the platform itself. So let me just add that the ship is being also qualified to operate with the Osprey, the MP-22.
Oh,
so
fantastic!
We've been operating with the Marines also during the deployment. So
excellent.
This enlarging always more and more our envelope of usage with the MP-22. So this makes the platform, of course, very keen for other cooperation in the Med or anywhere in the globe.
Yeah, one of the aircraft of choice. So, whenever I had a chance to ride something that had to get me someplace, I love the Osprey. And it's not trivial that you can operate the Osprey off the deck of the Cavour. I mean, it's a very hot platform from the standpoint of exhausts that are coming out of those turbines as she lifts off the deck and goes vertical. And you've got to have a reinforced deck that's not going to melt. So that is commendable. You mentioned so many things. I just want to capitalize on a couple of them. First of all, going back to Unified Protector and the mutual support that we provide for one another as NATO allies and as allies in general and partners in general. I recall a story where Garibaldi was operating, the AV-8s were flying. There were targets all over the north coast of Italy, particularly Gaddafi's 32nd Brigade, which he was using against his own people. And some people use the G word for genocide. He was killing innocent civilians in Benghazi, which was the site of unrest with the 32nd Brigade. So we were plinking those targets, and the Italians had a fair share of those targets. You had plenty of 500-pound bombs on the ship to drop from the Harriers, and I think the Harriers can carry 4 of those bombs at any one run. But you use so many of the bombs, you ran out of the bomb kits, the little tail kits. So do you remember Vice Admiral Gemignani?
Yes, I do.
He was my boss down in Naples and Nisida in my first one-star assignment as Allied Submarine South Commander. And so Admiral Gemignani went to Rome and took over as your vice chief of naval operations. And he was down in Naples, and he said to me, "Look, we need more of these kits. If you want us to do strikes, we're out. And these are American 500-pound bombs. Can you help us out?" So we had supply take these things out, and I think we lifted them off the deck of TAKE or the Mount Whitney. I can't remember, but there was a helicopter lift of a net full of these boxes of bomb kits that flew over to Garibaldi and dropped them on deck, and you guys were back in business. And that's what I call a real team effort. You are listening to Maritime Nation, the Center for Maritime Strategy's podcast designed to dive deeply into the policy challenges facing America's sea services and the role of the United States as a sea power on the global stage. We aim to provide you with the highest quality analysis on the most pressing maritime security challenges by joining in conversation with key experts and practitioners. This season is produced with support from Dataminr. Dataminr is recognized as one of the world's leading AI businesses. The company's clients are the first to know about high-impact events and emerging risks so they can mitigate and manage crises more effectively. Dataminr solutions are relied on 24/7 by hundreds of clients, including the Department of Defense, in over 100 countries across 6 continents to help them solve real-world problems. Here at CMS, our whole team uses Dataminr's First Alert to stay up to date on breaking news or crises that impact our national security or the security of our allies and partners. You mentioned the French. I mean, Charles de Gaulle, I've operated with her. I've been on her, sailed with her. I know the Strike Group commander, phenomenal guy like yourself, Admiral Jacques Maillard, and he's done a great job. And they're just coming back from the Pacific, and delighted to see that you worked with him. And lastly, you had to go through the Red Sea, right, for your deployment. And that was a pretty tough time with what's going on. I mean, we got the Truman over there right now. The Houthis say they've launched strikes twice at her in the last 24 hours. Article in the newspaper today about the United States Air Force providing support against those missiles. How was that Red Sea transit for you? Was that pretty, what we would call dicey for the Italian Navy?
Well, it was challenging. It was challenging. It was jumping from a training scenario that I talked about before
into real war.
Right after the real war. But it was a great proof of integration and cooperation with our allies, because at that time, Eisenhower Cavour Strike Group was there. So we've been integrating with Eisenhower, F-18 flying, and we were flying with F-35s and AV-8. So we integrated, of course, with the French operating in the area and the Fifth Fleet. So it was a very great effort of integration. I wouldn't say only cooperation. It was really integrating our forces. So our transit was challenging because it's a real war, as you said before, but it was a way to demonstrate that we could make it, and we made it all the way southbound when we deployed in the Indo-Pacific, and we made it the other way around when we came back in the Med Sea, and always with more and more confidence on our capability, on the capability of the air wing, and of course of the escort ships that we were having with us. It's amazing because what we realized during this deployment is the way we are, as we like to say, plug and play with our alliance. So within the alliance, we don't need so much training and preparation. If you want to cooperate, you just exchange the essential information. We operate the same C2 system, so control and communications, and so other features that allow very quickly to connect to each other, to exchange vital informations, and so that makes very effective our alliance. This is one of the great opportunities that we had, and we after Eisenhower, when we arrived in Australia after Pitch Black, we rendezvoused with the Cavour Strike Group 3, Abraham Lincoln, and we trained with them before arriving in Guam, where we had the chance to use the live fire range of the Mariana Island of the Fifth Fleet. So that was a great experience, also working with the Lincoln. And we rendezvoused with them one more time on the way back when they were deployed in the Arabian Sea, in the Arabic Sea. So we made a very effective training with fifth generations live fire, and that was really, really, really amazing. And as I said before, really plug and play. No great work behind the. You
make it sound easy, but you and the great country of Italy are to be commended for your courage of going in there. That is, as Admiral Cottle, who's been on the program here with us, our commander of Fleet Forces Command down in Norfolk, said the best possible training environment is the real-world environment that we're in the Red Sea, and probably, over 50% of our destroyers have been in a combat situation and shot down Houthi drones, missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles throughout this conflict, and we have learned on every one of these engagements of how to change or upgrade our tactics, training, and procedures to become even more effective. And this latest campaign that's going on in the last 48 hours and will continue until we degrade the Houthis to the point they can't do this anymore is testament to, that ability to sustain in a very, very difficult and hairy combat situation. Now, let's see. I was trying to remember who was the Italian chief of naval operations before Admiral Girardelli. Do you remember?
It was Admiral De Giorgi.
Admiral De Giorgi came to Naples while I was there as Sixth Fleet, and he said, Foggo, we've got Operation Sophia going on in the Mediterranean, and I have ships down there, and Libya did not turn out the way we wanted, so it was kind of a bit of a rogue state, and nobody really knew who was on whose side of the other. But the Libyans had a few airplanes operational, and they would fly a supersonic jet out in the Mediterranean and turn towards the Italian flotilla in Sofia. And he got concerned about it because your guys were being defensive, but you did not have a hair trigger. You didn't fire immediately. And he said, do you have a ship in the Eastern Med that could potentially link with us, with Link 16, and extend our air picture so we have a little bit more time to react? Because, my team on the water is calling me in Rome. I go, really? I mean, that's going all the way up to the CNO? He goes, yeah. I said, I can help you out. So we had one of the last frigates of the line. This is the reason why we need the FREM and we need the Constellation class, the USS Simpson. It was a great ship. And we linked Simpson through Link 16 with the Italian ships that were out in Sofia and gave you that air picture. And that is the value of integration and interoperability with our allies and partners. Absolutely fantastic. So thanks for that. I'm really interested in your bilateral operations with a nation that's very near and dear to the United States. And we just had the Prime Minister here, Prime Minister Modi, and that's the nation of India. So what was it like working with the Indian Navy carrier, Vikramaditya, and the destroyer, Visakhapatnam?
Well, it was very interesting. It was the multi-deck exercise, the only exercise we did outside the alliance. All the others we did it with the Allied, and it was interesting because we could realize their mindset, their procedures, but above all, the willingness to open up and cooperate and make training together with us. So this was a great sign for very important because we are the Italian Navy is very concerned in the area of the Indian Ocean. We are present. We have always a ship in Atalanta for anti-piracy. You mentioned the Red Sea. We are very concerned in keeping open the sea line of communication through the Red Sea, of course. And so we have always a ship over there. So in Aspides, we cannot avoid to invest in great opportunities of cooperation and training with the Indian Navy, and that's what we did. So we made a lot of coordination meeting and set up before going at sea, and we had the chance to train with the Navy and the Air Force. We met the Air Force also at Pitch Black exercise, but it was just a very short window opportunity. So, but when we were over there at sea, we made a lot of training, and it was very interesting because there are so many differences the way we operate at sea as Allied, and of course other partners. This is another takeaway of the campaign as it all, because it was so easy, as we said before, to operate with the other Allied, because we are used to do things together everywhere in the world. So we're ready to do it whenever we need to do this. When we come to partners, it's, there are partners that are used to train with us a little bit more often, I would say, like Australian Navy, for example, or the Japanese, a different level. But that was the very first time that we made air operations with the Indian Navy and the Indian Air Force.
Is that right? First time?
Yes, first time. We had the chance to operate and know the MiG-29 operating from the Vikramaditya.
Mm-hmm.
And we had the chance with the Air Force at night time to make air operations with the Rafale of the Air Force, the Sukhoi 30. So this is a very great opportunity for our Navy, for our pilots, to know other techniques and to grow in experience in this.
Who won the dogfights?
I cannot tell you that. I cannot tell you that.
Okay.
I cannot tell you that. But it was a great.
Very diplomatic, sir.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. It doesn't matter when you train. We don't have any winner or loser.
Exactly.
It's just what you take away at home, and of course the high value of cooperating together is really is really the key. So
Yeah.
this is the main result of this interaction.
Thank you so much for the insights there. I mean, the Indian Navy is extremely important, and we have a one-star officer who is our lead foreign area affairs officer as a defense attaché in India, and there's a reason for that. And tell you a quick story about the Indians and the Chinese. Back in 2013, for a year, don't ask me how, but I got involved in this negotiation with the PLA Navy, the Chinese Navy, on rules of behavior in the air and maritime domain. We actually signed an agreement in 2015 after, going back and forth to Beijing and Beijing to Washington and da-da-da-da-da. And there were a couple of interlocutors at the table, and I'll protect the names, but there was one Chinese admiral in particular who was an operator. He'd been in charge of a Chinese counter-piracy task force, one of the first. And, I said to him, I know you have a lot of differences with the United States Navy, and sometimes we butt heads around the world, not so much in the Gulf of Aden where they were doing their counter-piracy task force, but out in the Pacific and contested areas. I said, how do you get along with the Indians in the Indian Navy? And he said, oh, they never bother us like you do. And then he goes, well, except once. And I go, when was that? He said, well, I took my counter-piracy task force. At the time, he was a one-star, into an Indian port. I think it was Mumbai, but I can't swear to it. And he was met on the pier by an Indian Navy counterpart, an Indian Navy Commodore, a one-star, who saluted and said, Admiral, welcome to our ocean, the Indian Ocean. And the Chinese did not like that. And I thought that was great. And, shortly thereafter, we renamed the region the Indo-Pacific. And we have a tendency to rename oceans and things like that. But taking into account, it was Asia-Pacific, which is apples and oranges. It's a continent and a body of water. There's two big bodies of water out there that are really important,
Yes,
the Indian
yes,
Ocean
yes.
and the Pacific Ocean. So thank you for that. You also participated, and you've alluded to a couple of times here, Pitch Black, and that was with the Australians, right? How'd that go? What was that all about?
Right, that was a huge exercise. This exercise was, as I said before, one of the pillars where we built all the campaign, because we were about to train our air wing with around 20 Air Force with different platforms. And it was a large force exercise. We were flying 3 times a day, also nighttime, with around 45 jets, a lot of air-to-air refueling, huge live fire ranges that we could use, huge airspace to train. So that was a great opportunity for a Navy that is willing to declare initial operational capability. So we had to train to use our weapons, to train and to know so many different platforms at that time. So that was a great opportunity. It was very successful. Let me add that we were the very first Cavour Strike Group participating in exercise Pitch Black.
No kidding, really? Another first? Wow.
Yeah, another first. And we split our air wing. That was another challenge that we wanted to put in place. So we put the F-35Bs ashore, and we kept the AV-8Bs on board Cavour, and we were playing our part from the sea. So we were adding value to the exercise as it all. So that was a great opportunity, and we could really make our let's say our outcomes to declare the IOC of the F-35Bs, the initial operational capability, faster and faster, because we were planning to declare the IOC at the end of the deployment if everything was in its place. But the Pitch Black was for sure, together with the opportunity to use the live fire range in Mariana Island.
Wow.
That they were the two opportunities that made things very fast.
Wow. That must have been quite a contrast between kind of the constrained airspace of the Mediterranean. I mean, you get civilian airliners flying all over the place, and you're out near the Marianas. I mean, you've got this massive hunk of ocean. You probably don't see a lot of civilian air traffic once in a while, but you've got plenty of room to maneuver. And yeah, it's fantastic.
Yes,
not inhibited by any rules that constrain you.
Yeah, in a way, it's it's a challenge to have this huge airspace to control or
Yeah.
maritime space, because we're talking about the maritime domain
Yeah.
mainly in the Pacific. But at the same time, you have the
Yeah.
opportunity really to take
Yeah.
the most out of this.
Really take the gloves off. And it's like driving a Ferrari on Highway 95 in America. You just can't do it. You know, you need to be out on the Autobahn someplace where there's no speed limit. And that's the Pacific. You know, we often talk about tyranny of distance out there because it's so vast, but it can be very beneficial for what you were doing with your air arm.
Let me add, Admiral, because you're talking about the interactions with Admiral De Giorgi at the time in the Med Sea. We kept all the way from our departure to when we were back in the Med Sea. We were always looking to establish connections with all the data links available with our allied. And that was very effective because we were continuously in contact with the fleets. So that was very useful because we could take advantage of all the information timely, right away, at sea, what we were having around. And when you have to build a maritime domain awareness in such a huge maritime space as we were dealing with, that was very helpful. Let's say it was essential. So we were needing each other and building all these connections. And you were mentioning this help that you gave at that time.
And vice versa. I mean, our allies and partners provided incredible information to us, particularly in Odyssey Dawn Unified Protector. And it's all about the common operating picture, isn't it? So if you can extend the look of a carrier strike group or an individual ship over the horizon, and you can get information on what's coming at you, you can be much better prepared for what we call in this day and age, in 21st century warfare, decision advantage. And, you know, that's what our program Overmatch is all about, is to give us that common operational picture and situational awareness that's even better on the battlefield than the adversary, so that you can outmaneuver the adversary in decision-making early and potentially avoid a kinetic exchange because you cut him off and deter. Fascinating. Well, you mentioned a couple of things. I didn't realize that you also you have F-35s that are designated for the Naval Air Arm. You also have them for the Italian Air Force, and you had them both at the same time on the ship. So, you know, we have this rivalry amongst the services in the U.S. We have the Army-Navy game, and the Air Force Academy has a football team too. So we all have this rivalry. But when you come together in a real-world operation, you work together. And I recall having the Air Force and the Navy on board Mount Whitney with us during Odyssey Dawn. We had a naval air liaison element from Fallon, from Top Gun, and we also had an air combat control element from Ramstein, Air Force officer. So we had a flag officer, a brigadier general, and his team helping us maintain the air tasking order, the ATO.
Yeah. And
for a non-aviation Navy guy as the operations officer, my learning curve was steep, and I was happy to have the Air Force with us. So how'd it go with the Air Force F-35s on board your ship? At the end of the day, was it really
was
good?
Great. It was great because we were having the jets, we were having the pilots, we were having on board the maintainers. So it was a great...
maintainers too.
Yeah. All the way, they were not very familiar with naval operations, of course, on board the carrier. But at the end of the game, they were doing exactly all the things, activities that on board the ship and in flight that all of my pilots were carrying. So it was a step-by-step activity. They grow in the time to be more familiar with the naval operations, and at the end of the game, they've been operating in a perfect way together with the naval aviators.
Fantastic.
So that was a great example of integration. I'm very proud of this because we all in each service we have this kind of
rivalry.
Let's say rivalry. That is, but in this we with F-35Bs, F-35 program in general, there is an added value.
Mm-hmm.
The platform itself, if it's not used together with the other service, with other allies, can give only a small percentage of the performance that you require in the battle space in all the domains. So we need to go over these, let's say, rivalries and put together our forces like we are doing. And I'm very proud for the work of the Air Force guys that I've had aboard together with others that were caring about the meteo and they were forecasting in this challenging scenario also.
Yeah.
So it was a great joint effort, I would say.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure the Air Force appreciated the wonderful accommodations and probably the food on board Cavour. In Naples, of course, the Air Force Academy, the Italian Air Force Academy, Navy's up in Livorno, and the Italian Air Force Academy is in Naples on the most beautiful site overlooking the Bay of Naples. And I think it was General Camporini was the Air Force CHOD for a while I was over there, and the cooperation with the Air Force was just unmatched. So you also participated in an incredible exercise called RIMPAC, the Pacific Rim of the Ocean exercise. Dozens of ships, thousands of people, run out of Hawaii by PAC Fleet and Indo-Pacom. How was that? How'd that go for you? And what are some highlights?
It was great. It was great because we deployed ITS Montecuccoli. Montecuccoli, it was at the time the newest ship delivered to the Navy. It's a multi-combat purpose ship, and she had a new radar, so she had new features, and it was the very first time that she was operating in such a challenging scenario in a multi-domain exercise. This was a real effective, I would say, test bench for this class of ship that are turning to be very effective and appreciated. As you know, we build our ship it's the Italian industry that Fincantieri that is managing the project of the ship together with the Navy, in close relation to the Navy. So this exercise, together with the other one that followed for Montecuccoli, there is a Pacific Dragon, were very helpful in realizing all the results that we were doing in the new projects, in the newest and most modern ship that we were handling. So that was a great opportunity, and of course the opportunity to cooperate with such an amount of navies and scenarios. And in Pearl Harbor, of course, there was. Beautiful place to muster for an exercise like that. And of course, with an historical meaning that it was very much appreciated. So it was a great opportunity. The very first time that I believe that the Navy participated in RIMPAC, but for sure we will keep our in our intentions to keep on going and learning more and more in all the area, and take advantage of such amazing exercise like the Pacific Dragon and RIMPAC.
Fantastic. I assume the Chinese were watching while you were out there in RIMPAC.
They are everywhere.
We used to say.
They're everywhere. So.
Yeah, always get the Chinese surveillance ships out there watching us. Final question. You mentioned, first let me say, you mentioned Fincantieri and Italian warships. They build some great ships. We're doing a study. We just embarked on a study this month on the Allied Maritime Industrial Base, and I'm hoping to get back to Italy, to Trieste and Genoa, and see the dual-use capability you have in your shipyards. You have a lot of capability in Italian shipyards, not just in Italy, but all over the Mediterranean. So you have dry docks and you have industrial facilities that build incredible cruise ships. That's a big part of the business. But that workforce kind of transcends into the military realm up in Genoa, where you both maintain and build Italian warships. And you also have a consortium called OCAR, which I've talked to your dad about, and I'm going to try to see that in action too. So I think there's some industry best practices there that we can benefit from in this country as we ramp up, because the White House has got a new shipbuilding office, and it's supposed to be about commercial shipbuilding, but it's about our industrial base overall. So we may want to take a few lessons from you there. Final question really is any lessons learned, anything that you can share with our viewers on valuable interoperability lessons, work with you've talked about the Japanese, the Australians, the Indians. How does the Italian Navy see its future role based on the success of this exercise in the Indo-Pacific? And final thought, are we moving the needle? One of the main goals of the United States and the United States Navy is to deter conflict. And so our goal, and I hear fleet commanders talk about this in the Pacific and the Atlantic, is that we want Xi Jinping to wake up in the morning and say, today is not the day. And so are we moving the needle in that direction with allies and partners out in the Pacific? What do you think?
I don't know. As a military, I'm a technician. So I would say I have to get ready to fight my ships, to be ready to react in any scenarios and any activity. Of course, political decisions will have here the direction where to be. Of course, we want to be ready. We want to be ready, as I said before, to be plug and play with our ally. And of course, with our partners, as I said before. And let me tell you one thing. After we came back, we realized that the Italian Navy, we have the ships to build our own capacity. Let's say a very national Cavour Strike Group. But what we did is to realize, to put an effort to set a multinational, let's say, framework where to integrate other escort ships. I received the tactical command, the TACOM, of French, Spanish, for the first time, U.S. ship when we were in the South China Sea. That is a very, it's beyond the interoperability. This is almost the interchangeability among allied. Moving to the partners, we are still, we realize we have the need to have more opportunities to train together to improve our interoperability. So this is where we are. So that's why we need to invest in more and more opportunities to be together with them, to make things together and to improve more and more our way to make things together and to be ready to warfight, to react also to other crises anywhere. This is the business of the military, to be ready, to train, to set all of the let's say the means to exploit the capacity, the reciprocal capacities that we can find in other allied and partners. So I don't know if I answered your questions. But,
you did.
I would say there is a very powerful strategic message that we are delivering when we build things together, when we cooperate.
Absolutely.
The way we are doing, and the level of cooperation, as I said before, that we have reached among allies, and the effort that we are putting in making even more effective our cooperation with our partners over there.
Absolutely. We must always remind ourselves of the importance and the impact and the solidarity of allies and partners. And when we work together, it's a force multiplier. And Admiral, I just want to thank you so much for making the trek across the Atlantic to be with us here today. We have a couple more activities later today and tomorrow, and we have a global carrier operations brief tomorrow with featuring yourself, the story of Cavour for our local audience, and Admiral Dwyer, who's the N357 former 2nd Fleet Commander, JFC Norfolk Commander. We also have Commander Owen from the British Embassy, who's going to talk about Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales, and Capitaine de Vaisseau Graal, who will talk about Charles de Gaulle and her recent trip out to the Pacific.
May I just want, since you mentioned Charles de Gaulle and Prince of Wales, one thing that I would like to add, if I may,
please do,
is that we, for the very first time, the Italian Navy coordinated the deployment in the Indo-Pacific with the Royal Navy, UK Royal Navy, and the French Navy. So when we came back, Clemenceau 25 has started. So the Charles de Gaulle is right now over there, and when she's gonna be back, Prince of Wales is going to be
heading out,
setting out there, and we are about to go at sea now for the Mare Aperto and train together with Prince of Wales to be ready to certify their deployment for the IMAST 25. Wow. So this is impressive because this has never happened, and so this is the way we are moving in the future to make the most of our cooperation and coordination.
Wow, that's fantastic. I didn't realize that. So you guys have coordinated all this, and it's the outgoing guys being trained by the Return Strike Group, and I know Admiral Maillard and CDG, the Charles de Gaulle, are just coming back in April from Clemenceau 25. That's just fantastic. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is truly a force multiplier. And speaking of which, I have to tell you that the mayor of Naples at the time, no longer there when I was in Naples, was my great friend, Mayor Luigi de Magistris. And we had two things that we loved in common. One was the U.S. Navy band, because he would come to our band concerts, and we played beautiful music, both in Italian and English artists. The other thing was the football team, Forza Napoli. So I wore my watch for you today for my friend Signor Argenio in Naples. And this is the original symbol of Forza Napoli with the stallion on top of the soccer ball here. And that's in honor of your trip across the Atlantic. So if you get a chance to go see Signor Argenio, he's a tailor and a great guy in Naples, say hello for me, because I sure miss it. Folks, that's a wrap. Thank you to Rear Admiral Giancarlo Ciappina for joining Maritime Nation with his strike group staff. You can't see, but they're around us watching us here today. And I'd like to thank our listeners for joining us each month. If you have not heard our previous episodes, you can always catch up on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. All content described here today can be found on our website, www.centerformaritimestrategy.org, all lowercase. Thanks to Dataminr for the sponsorship and support, and our sound engineer, James Peterson, for the exceptional job that he does. Stay tuned for the next episode of Maritime Nation. And that's all out here.